Hello, I'm Matt George. Thanks for taking a look at our video here on the 87 XR rebuild. We're just starting out. Got it set up in the garage on some straps that go from the handlebars up to the roof here to a couple tie-down hooks. And that's so that the bike is nice and steady. You can rock it back and forth and it won't fall over. Got the tools all arranged that we need to take this apart. We have a problem with third and fourth gears, the reason that we're starting to work on this. And the first step to getting this engine out is to take off some of the external stuff like the tank and the seat and the side covers. I'm going to do that now. I've got a spot set up on my shelf over there for the bigger parts. That's always a good idea if you're going to take something apart. Always have a place to put your parts, some way to label them. Masking tape's good for that, Sharpie marker. And if possible, you can thread bolts back into where they go so you don't lose track of them during the assembly period. So we're going to go ahead and work on those things and pick up from there. Thanks for watching. To get the tank and seat off, the first thing we do is shut the fuel valve off, and then we have a fuel line that we have to disconnect from the carburetor once it's off, and we can still expect to have a little gas come out of that. And then on the tank sides over here is a couple of bolts, and I believe those are 12mm bolts. There's one on either side of the tank. In too much. There we go. Alright, so the side cover, 3 bolts there, the bolts there on the front of the tank, and then the seat. This is an 87 XR200. Under the seat there's 2 bolts there. One of them's actually missing right now, so I'll be adding that to my parts list. But anyways, the seat bolts come right out there. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take care of that step and come back. Okay, we're back. We've got the gas tank, seat removed. Next is going to be the air cleaner, carburetor, and on this side we've got to take the exhaust off. We're going to start by taking the head pipe off here at the cylinder. This is not necessarily exactly how the order might proceed in the manual, but I've done this a couple of times, and so I'm just kind of going from my experience. So if you're using a manual and tearing yours down and that's not the very next thing, then just realize some of this might be slightly out of order, but we will get it all carefully disassembled. Okay, see you in a little bit with the carburetor and the pipe off. Okay, here on the carburetor, to get the carburetor off, there's a couple of 10mm nuts, and I've got that one loose already, and the one on the other side is just the same. And back here is the air box connection to the carburetor. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a band clamp right here, and I've already got that loose. And so the next part is have to kind of take the carburetor out of there. Before that, okay, on this side the carburetor slide needs to be removed, and you can just most times get it with just your hands. If it's a little tight, you could get a set of crescent wrench, or not a crescent wrench, but a tongue and groove wrench in there. But that just comes up, and you carefully pull the slide out. Actually, it's a little bit stuck, so you have to be careful, but there it is. And we're going to put a plastic bag around that to cover it. Okay, and next is just to pull the carburetor off of here physically. Okay, we have this carburetor disconnected from the flange in terms of its hardware. It's sort of pushed backwards into the air box, and we need to get it out. And the plan is to go down forward here and then pull it out this way, as opposed to going up. So we kind of pull back on the carburetor and push it towards the air box, and then a little bit of luck, hopefully, and a little bit of maneuvering, we get the air box disconnected. Actually, in this case today, it seems like this is a little bit stuck to the air box lip that goes around the other side. So what we're going to do is take a pick set and kind of go around the air seal, the seal of the air box around the carburetor, and just loosen that up a little bit. need to separate from the carburetor. Just pull that back a little bit. Okay. And with that, we can twist the carburetor now, and it comes out. There's a drain tube underneath here that's kind of hanging up a little bit. Pull that out. There's not really a lot you can do about that except to disconnect it from the carburetor first. On my bike, it was down underneath in between the swing arms, so there's the carburetor, and we will put that on the shelf. There is some fuel in that, so we want to make it sure either set it up right side up or put it in some kind of container, but definitely not near any of your garage heaters or anything like that. So I want to put it up on the shelf with the seat and a gas tank. Okay, for these two flange bolts here, you're going to need a 10 millimeter, preferably a boxed end wrench. You can get a socket on this one, but not on the lower one, so box end 10 millimeter for those. Okay, just getting the last nut off here by hand. Of course, it's already loose. And then this flange has a couple little collars in here you're going to want to keep track of. And those actually fit around the pipe and push the pipe into the crush washer. These are a little bit rusty, so they're going to go probably to the sandblaster, get cleaned up in between here. So that's that. We still have to get the other part of the pipe at the midpoint separation done, as well as the support, and I'll show you that here in a second. Okay, the next thing we have to take off is this clamp around the forward and rear exhaust pipe. It's two 12 millimeter bolts. You can see right there, 12 millimeter. And they're kind of long bolts. They're also somewhat more subject to corrosion because of the high temperature of the exhaust. So I went around the other side and put a little bit of breakaway or similar. You know, use whatever you got for lubricant. Even WD-40 would be good, just to lube those up a little bit, because they have quite a ways to go. And I also like to use the air ratchet for this because it just makes it a little faster. Okay, the next thing we have to do is take the head pipe off, and it's ready to come off with the clamp and the flange disconnected. So you just have to wiggle it and jiggle it a little bit, get it moving. Also, there's a decompression cable, I almost forgot about. It's right here, and it's on the exhaust shield, which the exhaust shield stays with the pipe. You don't have to take that off. You have to get that clutch cable free, and just kind of pull and wiggle at the same time. Off comes the pipe, goes onto the parts shelf. Alright, the next thing I need to do is take this shield off the front of the motor on the other side of the engine where I need to get to drain the oil. It's kind of in the way, and it's just time to take that off next, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's a series of 12 millimeter bolts, and we're just going to go around. There's one there, there, and there, and it's a mirror image on the other side. There's not really any accessibility problems with these, so you can just take the air ratchet, break them loose, and pop them right off. Okay, I've got this rock guard, this engine shield kind of down here, and I told you there was bolts up here. I was wrong about the middle ones, those don't come off. The bottom ones there come off, but I forgot to tell you there's one arm that extends underneath here that still has one bolt left there. And the idea for that is if you need to drop this down out of the way to get a wrench to the oil filter, at least on this one, this doesn't have to be completely removed, it just swings out of the way. So, but we got to get that one more bolt off, so we're going to do that next. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is drain the oil from this. We have a cap bolt here, which is a 24 millimeter. That's for the oil drain. Also, there's a finger strainer in there that's going to pop out with a little bit of a spring there, so you got to be careful for that. But basically, I like to use a socket on this so we don't round off those corners, those big cap bolts like that of that size, 24 millimeter. If you tried that with a wrench, you might round those corners. So if you can, a socket is best. And what we're going to do is move the shifter down. I've moved the bike a little bit to assist in the shifter, and then I just get that loose. And I did crack that loose before I started the camera, but it was very easy to do. It wasn't on there very tight in. So just like that, move the wrench out of the way. Oil's starting to come out, and we have the cap and a spring. In this case, the finger strainer did not come out, so I'm going to go in after it. Set those down there for now. And there's the finger strainer right there. I want to look at it right away and look inside and see if I see any metal debris. This looks actually very clean. The finger strainer does, and actually the oil doesn't even look too bad. It probably only had about 10 hours on it, but anyways, if that even. Okay, so we're gonna let the oil drain out of here for a little while, and see you here in a little bit. Okay, I decided while I'm waiting for that oil to come out, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the shifter. Now we might need the shifter at another stage once the engine is on the bench to run through the gears, but for right now it's going to be in the way. I'm going to try and get the engine out of here, and we also are going to work on this cover for the chain and go ahead and take the chain and sprocket off here in a little bit. So alright, I'm going to work on this shifter here. Okay, I have the bolt completely removed from the shifter. Now I'm just jiggling it off, and there it comes. Sometimes they won't come off. Sometimes they fight you a little bit. If they do, you can normally, with the bolt completely removed, get a screwdriver right in there in that groove and kind of spread those apart a little bit and work it off there. And sometimes a little oil wouldn't hurt too while you're trying to get that off. So I'm going to inspect the bolt and inspect the threads. It looks to be in pretty good shape, so I'm going to go ahead and put those back in. Otherwise I put that on my order and part list, and sometimes on these you have to chase the threads out if somebody's done a number on the bolts, or if it's just good and dirty, but this seems okay, so we'll just put this through a parts cleaner. Okay. Okay, next we're going to work on this chain and sprocket over here. So I'm going to start by taking the cover off and crack those bolts loose, and then use the air tool. Alright, get the sprocket. Yeah, just those are all 10 millimeters so far is what we're using here. That little plate off, and our socket will slide right off. We may have to take some tension out of this chain, but let's see if that's the case. Nope, we're able to get it. Sometimes if it fights you, you might have to loosen the chain there at the back wheel, but that's out of our way for now. We'll get it off once the engine's out. The engine, by the way, comes out the other side, so that being there doesn't really hurt us. Okay, the next thing I'm going to remove is the clutch cable. Sitting right here, right in front of us. So the way I do it is I use needle nose vice grips. Lock onto the clutch arm. That allows me, hopefully you can see this. Hang on, just stand around a little bit, get a little closer. What I can do is, sorry about that. Let's try it from here. Let's see what I can do here. There, that's better. Okay, so I can just kind of pull this clutch arm, pop the cable right out of here. There's the cable end. And release that clutch. And sometimes I mar this up a little bit. I'll just get a file and file that down if that's a problem. Alright, next I have to remove the clutch cable completely from the engine. So, take this stop nut off the aft side here. Slide that down out of the way. I can then move the clutch cable Pull it right around there. The bracket stays on the engine, and the clutch cable is now completely separated. Okay, continuing on this side of the bike, we're going to go ahead and take the Kickstarter off. So that on this bike is an 8mm. I'm not sure if this is the factory bolt or not, because we've changed the Kickstarter once on this bike, but it's either probably going to be an 8 or a 10. In this case, it's an 8. Okay, I have the bolt completely removed here from the Kickstarter, but it still is fighting me. It doesn't want to come off just without a little more influence. So I'm taking a screwdriver, a long screwdriver and hammer here, and I'm just going to cause that gap to expand a little bit. I'm pretty aggressive with that. I got it in there pretty far. And then I leave the screwdriver right in there, and I was able to just walk it right off of there. Then I'll go ahead and pull my screwdriver out. I'm going to thread that bolt back in there. Again, inspect the threads, inspect the bolt, make sure that stuff's in good shape, and if not, go ahead and take a tap to it and clean it up. Okay, we're on day 2 of the Honda engine removal here, and we have just a few more things left to remove. Spark plug, and also the ignition and CDI have a couple plugs on the other side. If you were just taking the engine out to do something like, say, a top end, you would proceed to take the engine mount bolts off. There's some here, there's one down below that you can't see under the engine here, and some around the front. But in this case, we know we're going to split the cases, and so what we're going to do is leave the engine in there a little bit longer so that we can get to some of the bigger bolts and get those broken loose first, and then we'll go ahead and take the engine out. Now this has a transmission problem, this 200, and that's why we're doing it that way. So what you'll find is once you get the engine out onto the workbench, it becomes somewhat awkward unless you have some kind of bench mounting system to hold the engine, because you have some pretty good sized bolts that are fairly tight, and when you go to apply torque to them, the whole engine just kind of wants to spin around on the workbench. So you could easily solve that with some jigs that would hold, temporarily bolt the engine in place, but right now we have it bolted in, so we're going to proceed this way. And the next thing to come off is going to be, besides that ignition and spark plug I mentioned, is going to be the brake lever, and I'll get the camera over so we can see what the hardware looks like for getting that brake foot pedal off of there. And then we're going to take that clutch cover off and go from there. So, okay, I have the camera kind of pointed up and I'm shooting at the brake lever, and it's tough to see, I know, but let me point it out and that will help. There's the bolt right there for the brake lever, and so we're going to get a socket on that, get that bolt removed completely, and then out here, back around the outside of the bike where the brake lever is, this just pulls right out. I'm sorry, where are we? There we go. This part just pulls right out of that bore once you have removed that bolt that I was just pointing out, and then we pull that out, and then the brake lever should just come right out of there. And there, actually, no, I take that back. There's one more pin. There's one more pin that attaches this connecting rod, the rod that goes, let me back up here a little bit. It goes all the way from the brake lever all the way back to the brake actuator on the drum, and that has to be disconnected as well. So we're going to work on those things and get back to you here in a little bit. Okay, I got the bolt removed from back here, the one that was tough to see that we looked at from underneath, and now I'm getting ready to pull this pivot out, but it's pretty flush with the frame, and this is where a pick comes in handy. I use a pick quite a bit on these little jobs. Anyways, so they're good to have around, good tools, and so what I do is I use that pick to get that started, and thereafter I should be able to just pull it out if I wiggle it a little bit. There it comes. Okay, so that takes care of the brake lever. In fact, I may be able to leave the brake lever connected and be able to work around there in this case. I think it's not going to be a problem for me, so we'll see. I'll leave it like that. It's kind of draped down now and out of the way now that it's out of that pivot, so we can proceed to work on this side case here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get the spark plug cover off, and come back around the other side here in just a second, and we'll get the CDI disconnected just so we get most of that stuff taken care of out of the way. Okay, I'm on the left side of the bike working on the wire bundle. There's a little clip here that I had to open up, bend it down just a smidge to be able to get these wires out and about out of the way so I can bring this connector a little bit closer to where I'm working. So you need to be able to pull on these wires, disconnect them. Actually, no, that's not the ones I want. Here we go. This is for the CDI. We'll take that one off first. And need a small screwdriver to get those out. We'll have to see. Yep, let me get a small screwdriver or pick. With the assistance of a pick, I ended up getting that off. I just had to get the little tab pushed down so that would disconnect. And the next is the CDI wires, which come out, let me just pan down here. They come out of the ignition side of the engine, and you sort of have to trace it up and along here. Goes behind this tube, comes back around, comes out this side. And we are eventually going to remove this engine completely from the bike, so we're going to go ahead and take care of that now. And again, that one's just a couple connectors. The only catch there is you want to make sure you're pulling on the connector, not so much on just the wire. And it is helpful sometimes to have some bent over needle nose to do just that. And if you pull on the wire, of course, you would risk pulling the wire out of the connector instead of pulling the connectors separate. So let's see how that goes. This one's a little bit tighter. Okay, so we got those done. Now we'll go ahead and work on the routing, unrouting that I should say. And again, some of these little clips that hold the wire bundle together are designed to be just opened up. They just bend and allow you then to fish the wire through that you're after and get it out of there. So we'll go ahead and do that. Got to be careful with the ends so they don't snag anything. So I don't want to pull too hard or too fast. Just kind of a steady pull and watch as it passes through and make sure it doesn't grab anything, get stuck, or anything like that. Also want to sort of make a note of where this stuff was, which in this case we have a video, so we can go back and watch it, see where they routed the wires. But here we go, and I got the wires just about freed from the engine. Need to do a little more routing underneath here. Okay, so the engine's now been completely electrically disconnected from the rest of the bike as well. Okay, we're back on the clutch cover side, and what we're going to do now is take all the bolts, all the perimeter bolts off of the clutch cover. And these are 8mm, a 1/4 inch drive. And we're just going to go around and get them all started. And make sure they're all loose. A couple of them are hard to get to. And again, with the brake lever being loose, you can finagle it out of the way to get the ones that are a little trickier. What we're going to do is get them all started loose. Make sure there's no issues with those. And after that, they're loose enough that I can just take them off by hand, so I get rid of the ratchet, makes it a little faster. And I'll go ahead and do that. Alright, I'm still working on these bolts. What I wanted to mention is some of these are of the same size, and occasionally on a case cover like this you're going to run into one that's a little bit longer. So I'm going to get a Sharpie marker and sort of take note of these as I pull them out. If one of them's long, I'm going to go ahead and put a dot or something on the case so I know which one went where. Not that big a deal. Sometimes you could even figure it out after the fact by looking at the case castings, but just to make it easier, we're going to take note of that for simpler reassembly. Okay, just as I suspected, we came up with two bolts that are one a little bit longer than the standard ones and one that's really long. And so on the long one I put L for long, and on the one that's quite a bit longer I put really long, RL. Just little initials on there, just help me on the way back assembling. Again, you could probably figure it out, but just to make things easy, we went ahead and make a note of that. Alright, there is one little thing I forgot about here, and that's the decompression lever. To get this side case off, I needed to remove this decompression lever, which is just a 10mm bolt here. In fact, it's already loose. Get it by hand now. And that has sort of a keyway, so it only goes on one way. It's pretty easy to take off and not get wrong when you're putting it back on. And I'm just going to pop that up and out of the way. And again, I may have to take this cable off to get the clutch cover. Let me see if I can finagle this around or under or out of the way. Yep, there it goes. It's out of the way. It's still there. We will have to deal with it, but it will allow us now to take this clutch cover off. So I'll work on that. Okay, so the clutch cover is ready to come off, but so far I've tried just pulling on it by hand and can't quite get it to come free. So we're going to want to take, we have one here handy, a rubber mallet. Definitely not any kind of metal hammer. Just we want to get a rubber mallet or a piece of wood or a block or something like that. Just bump it loose to break the seal on the case. Okay, got the rubber mallet. Couldn't find it there for a minute. Now I got it. And I'm just going to tap on the case. Oil pan ready because there could be some residual oil even though we drained the oil already. And we're going to pull this case cover off. Yep, we are getting some oil. And I'm going to put this case cover right down into the pan there as soon as I get it off. Okay, and if you wanted to see what that looks like, there it is. And put that face down with the oil drain out of that into our pan. And so that gets us access to the clutch and the oil filter, to which we will have to remove using a spanner wrench, which is a special wrench. And I have one of those, and so we'll do that here in the next step. But I first need to get this oil cover off. It's a Phillips head. I'm going to get a better Phillips than this one. This one's a number 1. I think that's going to be a number 2. So, get that and work on that. Okay, we're back to here working on the oil pump. What happens when I want to take these screws off is the oil pump tends to want to rotate with it. And so what I'm going to do, and I don't know if this is approved or not, but I take a penny and I put it right in between the gears here. And it's soft enough that it won't do damage to the gears. It allows me to go ahead and get these screws off, and as it tries to rotate, the penny locks in there and stops those from rotating, and it doesn't really even get very far before it breaks the screws loose. So that's a little technique for getting those out. Also, I failed to mention earlier, but I've been keeping track of all my parts right here in this tub. So sometimes I'll use a magnet and keep them together. In fact, in this corner, I've done just that. This is a rare earth magnet you can get from eBay for just a couple of bucks, and it works great so that hardware doesn't get lost. Just kind of throw them all together. Okay, so that's where we're keeping hardware. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get that clutch cover, or the oil pump, the rest of the way off the cover, as well as next I'm going to go ahead and remove the clutch. So sometimes this pump cover sticks on a little bit too, and you might need to work it off and be patient with it. Maybe even a little bit of tap on the edge of it with a screwdriver from the back side, but you got to be very careful if you're going to do that. Okay, we're back here. We have the oil filter cover removed. I have that down here in the oil pan, drain pan here, draining off the rest of the oil. And then I wanted to show you the spanner wrench if you've never seen one of these before, possibly. Hopefully you can see the profile of it as I rotate it around here in front of the camera. But anyways, this is a spanner wrench. You should be able to order it from Amazon by searching for spanner wrench. The part number is P506, or it could be a 08-0015, and it's going to fit most Honda bikes. And it just goes right in here, and we could then take the oil filter off. And I don't know if you can see this here too in the clutch, but this oil filter is in front of the clutch, so you're not going to get the clutch off until you get this oil filter off. So we'll go ahead and take that off next. Okay, that required a little bit of force. I used just a ratchet, no air tools. I wouldn't recommend air tools on those parts. Actually, almost anything interior in the engine, or any of the smaller bolts I wouldn't use air on. But anyways, so we got this oil filter adapter off, and let me see if we can get a better shot of that spanner nut. So you can see that in there. Kind of has the four cutaway sections where the spanner wrench attaches. I'm not sure how well that's showing up. Anyways, it's in there. Okay. So, in fact, we're going to put this oil filter back together loosely so that we keep track of it. And so we'll just go ahead and put the pieces together, get the screws into position, and just lightly thread those together. Again, I just try and, that's my technique, is to, if I have the ability to put the hardware back where it belongs, I'll do that so I can keep track of the hardware. Alright, with the oil pump removed, now we're going to take the clutch part and remove it. This part, the actuator, just you can pull that out. I'm just going to leave it in for now, but just remember that's kind of loose. These are 10 millimeter and those are fairly long, and I like to take those out evenly, so I back each one out a few turns, come back around, kind of go in a concentric pattern until I get them all done. Again, I'm going to use our penny. You can see the penny's taking a little bit of abuse, but it's doing its job to keep the gears from turning while we're loosening these bolts. So, oops, actually this time I have to move it to a different position because we're turning the other way now. Let's see if I can get it to stick in there. Well, or maybe we can just get lucky and get these bolts spring loose. Yep, they're not too tight, so I guess we won't even use the penny for this step. Yeah. Got lucky there, I guess. Okay. So we'll spare you the boring time of me just backing all these bolts off. Okay, we're just about at the end of the line of these bolts here, so we're getting there. We're going to take this assembly off and just set it aside in our parts tub. As we get to that, it's like almost there. One loose, two loose, got a couple more to go. Okay, there's the clutch spring holder, I guess you'd call it. Not sure the exact term, but anyways, that's off, along with the springs and the actuator. And again, I'm putting those in the parts tub so we keep track of them. Alright, that gains us access to the second spanner bolt inside the clutch. And you can see that now. I've zoomed in on it here. And so the next step is going to be take the spanner wrench and we'll remove this clutch basket and all the clutch plates. Okay, getting ready to take that spanner bolt off. I got the spanner socket on there, and I'm a little bit of difficulty. It's kind of hard to get my penny in between these gears because it's a little bit tighter of an area going the other way. So I use them on the end of a long needle nose vice grip. And we're going to kind of see how that works. It's going to be a bit challenging, but I think it will do the job. Okay. Well, that was easier than I thought. Didn't even really need the penny. It seemed to do its job, though. It held it steady there while we got it. The spanner not broken loose. Oh, I take that back. Nope, we still have it on there. I thought we were spinning it loose. Okay, what I had to do here was put this clutch springs and cover back over the springs and bolt that down. That pulls the plates together to sort of reactuate the clutch. Clutch has to be held. In this hand I'm holding vice grips, and I've got a penny jammed in between the gears right up in here on the underside. And I got the spanner wrench and the socket. Probably can't see that now, you can. And I'm going to break that bolt loose now. And I'm holding the gears from turning with my other hand with a penny jammed in between the gears. And I just got the clutch bolt, spanner bolt off. So I can pull that penny back out. Again, there's our little penny bent over, fed into the gears. And I'm going to get rid of the ratchet at this point. And put a little, just extension to make it a little bit easier to turn this. And should have our spanner bolt off here shortly. Hopefully it stays with it. It comes out. I'm just going to get my pinky finger. There we go. I'm sorry, spanner nut, not spanner bolt. Spanner nut's out of there. Okay, and there's a beveled edge to it that goes towards the outside. That's noteworthy as you're disassembling it. There, so you can see the profile a little better here. Yeah, beveled on one side, relatively flat on the other side. That's the side that goes down. Okay, that's going in the parts bin. And now I should be able to take the clutch off carefully here as an assembly without too much trouble. Alright, let me see, it might still be holding it up. Okay, the clutch was a little held up, so I took those 4 bolts out and it seemed to solve the problem. Don't know if that was it or if I just jiggled it just right to get it off, but it's coming off now. And just carefully remove that. And we're going to set that aside for now. I'm going to set it in the oil pan. And I'm also going to pull this main gear off. And it looks symmetrical. I don't see any markings or anything to indicate which side it goes in or on, so that looks okay. At first glance, everything looks okay inside here. But you can see those bolts, if you were trying to maybe work on that loose on a bench top, that you might be in a little worse shape not being able to, or having to hold the engine at the same time that you're doing the work. So, alright, we're getting close to pulling this engine out of here, so the next thing we're going to do is need to clear up and do a little cleanup time on the tools here. We've kind of made a mess with all the stuff on the floor and parts and tools that we've had out, so we're going to take a little bit and just clean everything up and start cataloging, putting away parts. Okay, I've taken the time to bag up some of the parts, the clutch, the oil filter, you know, stuff that's just oily and has sub-assemblies. We want to keep all those parts together. So I've done that, and then we have one more thing to take off here on the engine, and that is the oil pump itself, which you access a couple number 3 screwdriver screws, and what I did was put a bit on the end of a ratchet here, so I could get in there and get those. And those actually strip quite easily, so this is maybe the 2nd or 3rd disassembly, and those are looking a little marred in there, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to my parts list. Anytime I see hardware I don't like, I'm just going to go ahead and order that. Alright, looks like we're getting to the end here. We're going to be able to remove this oil pump. And if I remember correctly, it just comes off as one sub-assembly. Alright, here's an O-ring, 2 O-rings actually. It looks like one of them is on the block there and one of them stayed with the pump, and that's noteworthy. We're going to go ahead and put all this in one parts bag, and I'm going to peel the O-ring off, put it in the parts bag, seal that up. All these parts will go to a parts cleaner, and we'll get all new seals and O-rings. You'll see that on the assembly video. So now our left case half is actually pretty bare. There's also a Kickstart return spring we can now take off. It's key weight on there, so you really don't have to worry about how it comes off. It only goes on one way when you reassemble it. There's a little cup underneath the spring here, and again, it sort of only goes one way, so put that in the bag so I don't lose it, and get that zipped up and put away. Alright, this side looks pretty good, and The only additional thing we're going to do is maybe break the top end bolts loose. Oops, let me move back up there. Yeah, got some top end bolts we're going to take off before we get it out of the frame, and the next step will be to take the engine out of the frame. Okay, for my next step I'm going to go ahead and take the cylinder head bolts, the ones I can get to at least, get those loosened. Just again, one of the things just easier to do right now while it's in the frame. So take a wrench, and I can't remember the torque these have, but it's somewhat significant, so it's not going to be easy, but there they go. And I do that somewhat evenly. I've already done the ones on the other side, but I'm just catching up here at the video. It's just easier to loosen these now while it's still in the engine cradle here. And if anybody's ever wondering if you could service the top end on one of these while it's still in the frame, and the answer is no. You can adjust the valves, you can change the cam. There's a few things you can do, but removing the whole top end, as far as I know, on this model bike is not possible while it's still in the frame. So, alright, that's good. We got those loose. And then we will, while we still have the 12 on the air ratchet here, we'll start taking some of the engine mount bolts off. I'm going to start with the front and then also do the top. Alright. Oops, sorry, I guess I didn't have the camera in the right spot. What I just did was remove the front engine mount. And next we'll do the top engine mount right here. Again, those through bolted. Yes, they're through bolted. Extension would be a little bit handy right now, so if I can get an extension. Now the engine's still held in. Yep, sorry about that. The engine is still held in by the bottom engine mount. So far I'm taking the front, now I'm taking the top engine mount off of the bike. Alright, we're down to just 3 more engine mounts. One right down here. Next one is right up here. This one's through bolt. Actually, they're both through bolts. All the rest of them that are left are through bolts all the way to the other side. And the last one being forward lower here on the engine mount. So we'll go ahead and get those. They all appear to be, or no, actually I think, let's see, I think this front one's a 12 millimeter, and these next ones back here are either 13 or 14, but they're not 12s. Okay, we're going to get this lower engine mount bolt off. It's a little bit tricky. I can go over here on the left side of the bike, getting a wrench, put on a nut on the other end here because it's through bolted. I have my air ratchet already set up over here. So that takes care of that lower bolt. Got one more to get up here. Now I loosened but left in the forward engine mount, so this engine's not going to come crashing out of here. So I'll go ahead and see if we can break this one loose first. My hand seems to be pretty tight. There it goes. Okay. Just about there. Alright, again, we got to do some hardware collection and cataloging and bagging, so like I say, I'll spare you that boring part, but we basically have this engine ready to come out of the frame. So I got this engine almost ready to remove, and I realized I got one more small thing that I forgot, and it's this little breather tube right here, and we have to disconnect it. It's funny, you go all the way through the whole list of things and forget something as simple as that, and yet that could still cause you a little trouble when you go to remove the engine. So it has to be completely free here, disconnected, and so we got that now. Okay, we're going to pull this, there's one bolt left here in the front. Let me move the camera a little bit. I'm just going to reposition it all the way into a different spot here and get a better perspective of what's going on. Okay, next step really is going to be to get the engine out of the frame. Before I do that, I need a spot to put it. And anytime you're working on anything, you need to keep in mind that once you remove a big piece, you got to have somewhere to put it. So I'm going to go make a spot for the engine. Okay, I made a spot for the engine by getting a drain pan and lining it with a piece of foam sitting next to and ahead of the bike. So really all I have to do now is wrestle this engine out of the bike. And I've done this before, so I kind of know what I'm doing, but I remember last time I had to wrestle it out a little bit. I don't mean wrestle it, but just sort of move it around to get it in just the right spot so that it would come out. And I'm just kind of, as I do that, double checking to make sure I haven't left anything behind, but I'm going to just put a little lift on the engine to get the last remaining engine mount bolt out, and I'm going to drop some washers as I do that, so be ready for that. Alright, actually I got it without dropping them. And so next, like I say, I got to work this engine out of here, and it comes out only on this side as far as I know. Never tried to take it out the other way, but I'm pretty sure it only come out this way. Okay. I'm having a little trouble, so I'm going to put it on pause and come back to you here when I get it figured out. It is completely disconnected, but it's still just giving me a little trouble. Okay, back on the case here. I just put it on pause there for a minute while I figured out what I needed to do. And I needed to lift the engine backwards, towards the back of the bike to get it to clear the first mount. So let me show you. There we go. Now you rotate it and pull it out. And I'm going to make sure I get a good hold on it underneath. And that's it, our engine is removed. And I'm going to set it here in our container. Alright, just to show you what that looks like in the container I have here. There's the engine laying down in the protective foam bed in the oil pan.